It's time for scary stories. I don't scare easily, but this one really got me. It's mostly in Japanese, but the first part is translated, so we'll be reading that. There are things that shouldn't be seen. Often said my late grandmother, and that was quite true. I was drawn to the occult from childhood, and upon entering university I learned the truth of those words by stepping many times into the edges of the netherworld. Ghosts. Beings which no one can decisively determine whether they exist or not. The story that begins here revolves around stories brought forth by them. And this story, it can also be said to be the story of it and I. As its eyes glimmer in front of strangeness, as it breathes out words with a bedazzled expression, it warped the world that I always believed in. It made me anxious of whether the ground I stood on would shake. I would want to look over my shoulder just by listening, and I grew to fear whether someone were peeking from the dark shadow of the door. Maybe it was because the words it spoke included truths about the other side. It included truths that only applied to the scant, grotesque, waning dead ones. Now, after it has disappeared, do I finally know that. As grandmother said, it was a world that I should not have seen. It was a story that was not for the living person. However, I intend to speak of that. I intend to speak about all of that. Because if I don't, it wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Because it, having lived on the edge of darkness, having struggled through the threshold of darkness, would not be able to live in peace. Yes, I'll say it once more. From here on, is a story that shouldn't be known. And that says Phenomeno, in case you didn't know the title of the game. Hey, Mother. If the beings called ghosts existed in this world, would it ever be possible for someone to prove their existence such that no one anywhere could argue otherwise? I think it would be impossible, no matter how much humanity evolves. On the flip side, it also means that no one anywhere could prove irrefutably that they do not exist. From that standpoint, to discuss whether ghosts exist or not is a complete waste of time. That's why people who can emerge victorious from such a discussion must be people who can purely enjoy ghosts as a source of entertainment. Indeed, I fall under that group, and you could call me quite bluntly as an occult maniac. Mother may not know, but this is quite a niche existence in the world. To be of my age and go ghost hunt this, UMA that, I know that many people laugh at people like me, but you know, there are plenty of things in this world that are inexplicable. Yes. For example, the house I'm living in. This old, almost 30 years old building is by the side of the Tamagawa waterworks, and partly because it's located in such an odd place, has an incredibly low rent. When I came to Tokyo this spring, I looked for a cheap apartment and found this place. It takes 10 minutes of biking to reach a convenience store. It's surrounded by darkness and covered by thick copse, and because there are no streetlights in the area, it's completely dark at night. However, I enjoy this old building. It was built like an old mountain cottage, as the first floor was a garage and the second and third floors were a blowout, so it was more than luxurious for a person living alone. The kitchen was as cramped as the kitchenette, but it had a living room, a Japanese-style room, a bath, and even an atelier. From what I hear, an architect had designed it as a personal workplace. I liked it at first sight. Furthermore, for a place with a bath to be just 30,000 yen in Tokyo, Musashino was unthinkably rare, and it came with an oral story that could not be ignored. This is a house that grants wishes. So said the smiling real estate agent who introduced this place to me. The architect who built this became famous, the illustrator who moved in became busy and moved closer to the city, and the young couple that was living here until last month gave birth to a baby, which led to this becoming open. You are quite lucky. After hearing that, who wouldn't immediately seal the deal? So I jumped at the opportunity. There's probably a feeling of superiority too, given that my colleagues at university pay over twice the rent and live in rabbit cages. In any case, I was quite pleased at how lucky a man I was with my first time living alone. Yet, within a month I realized how big of a mistake that was. I can hear sounds somewhere where I'm sleeping at night, the squeaking of something persistently attempting to open some old door. I'd assumed it was some bad structuring somewhere, but I soon realized that it was odd that it always happened at 2 a.m. I tried going to the living room from my bedroom at the edge of the second floor, and the sound would stop. I thought maybe it was coming from above, and I went to the atelier on the third floor, but there was nothing that could be the source of the sound. I'd planned to eventually organize it to be cooler, but at the moment it was a bare environment with just my desk and a bookshelf. I looked around, but the windows were all shut, so there was nothing to make a sound. After that I went to the toilet and the bath. However, I could not find anything that could be connected to the sound. So I thought, maybe I'm just hearing things, and went to sleep again. But then the sound started again. Squeak, the sound of old wood groaning. I could also hear the sound of something scraping. It wasn't like a mouse or a cat. It was an eerie sound like something trying to crawl out of somewhere dark after having been tormented for a long time. Eventually that sound stopped, seemingly echoing throughout the house, and it felt like it was seeping through the atmosphere around my ear. As a result, I began keeping the lights on throughout the house and using earplugs when sleeping. However, the problem stopped being just sound. It was about 2 weeks ago I found a decisive thing. I found 7 carved into the wall of the landing of the stairs with something sharp. I immediately checked the doors and windows around the house, but there didn't seem to have been anyone entering. I was probably terrified. It was a pretty big engraving, but I forced myself to think I'd just never noticed it before. A few days later, though near the bathtub, 6, something sharp had carved it into the windowsill. And then a week ago, I found near the toilet 5, and even this easygoing person had to believe it. Something was in this house, and that was the some countdown. I immediately jumped out of the house. I couldn't live in the house anymore. I hadn't made any close friends yet at university, so I lived in karaoke boxes and net cafes for several days. I couldn't talk about this to anyone. I didn't know any monks nor any mediums. Then I realized, right, maybe the people from Gabuchi, edge of the netherworld, would be perfect for discussing this with. The colleagues of mine whom were also into the occult may believe me. And so. Incidentally, they aren't suspicious people at all. No, we are plenty suspicious. Huh? I recoiled at the sudden voice from above. When I looked up, I saw Karasu's white face, and she was waving her hand. Yo, Nagi! Karasu, since when were you there? I checked the time on my cell phone. It was 10:30 p.m. There were still 30 minutes until the offline meeting taking place at 11. Right around when you began explaining the house that grants wishes to your mother. That's basically the start, I complained as I grumpily placed my stationery back into my bag. Sorry, but, you know, peeping is like our trait, you know, said Karasu as she smiled cutely. This was a family restaurant near Ikaichi Road. We were going to have an emergency offline meeting here with the members of an occult site I frequent. And of course, Karasu wasn't her real name. It was a handle that she used online, just as I, Yamada Nagito, go by the name Nagi. She went by Karasu. This was the third time we'd met, but I still didn't know her real name. However, she was a veteran on the Ikai Gabuchi site, and thus a big senior to me, who'd only begun looking at the site this spring. Her appearance was as usual, a purplish velvet dress that reached her ankles, and below that was just a black camisole, or rather, her chest was completely bare. Her breasts looked like they would jump out at any time, which made looking at her awkward. However, this was her uniform of sorts. You're quite early. Did you close shop early today? I asked. Pretty much. Fortune tellers don't have much to do when there are no customers. She took off the stole she was wearing and sat down across from me. But you know, to put it frankly, she played with the skull-shaped accessories, shining at her breast as she looked at me. Your prowess has probably nothing to do with it. What? What was it? Right. Schema. Schema? Some word used in cognitive science. If you keep thinking you're scared, then you start seeing faces in the ceiling, that sort of thing. Because you're hearing squeaking every day, you began seeing numbers from the scratches that were always in your house. Seriously? Seriously. I mean, you came to Tokyo alone from super ruralness in Shizuoka, and this is the first time you're living alone, right? And then you're living in an old wooden house alone, so it's not too surprising. I used to live in a house that groaned and squeaked a lot, so I know how you feel. It's like the sound of saran wrapping, so it's pretty discomforting. So she said as she raised her hand to order beer from the waitress. Well, wait then. If this was just me being a wuss, then what should I say to the occult veterans that were coming to the offline meeting? Would I get banned from the wonderful site for being an airhead in just one night? Don't worry about it, she laughed. We're a bunch of folk that love meeting and trading shady stories. But it shouldn't be that simple. There were about 10 people coming to this meeting. And then Karasu said, huh? And looked at me. You hadn't looked? At what? This meeting, I think over 30 people are showing up. What? I heard access to the Ikaibuchi offline meeting board through my cell phone. This translation's not great. And then opening the House That Grants Wishes /investigation thread and was taken aback. You're right, why'd the numbers suddenly rocket? Are there that many people interested in the House That Grants Wishes? Unfortunately, not at all. See, even the regulars Sue and Zippo are coming to the meeting, right? They wouldn't move for some mere horror tale. Some horror tale. She laughed at the expression I made as she plucked the phone from my hand and then played with it. And then she turned the screen to me. The fourth poster, going by the name Yoichi. I think this many people are showing up because this one announced their participation. Who is Yoichi? No idea. Said Karasu, with a grin as she pulled out a cigarette. She lit the cigarette using a worn, slender lighter, and after blowing out a puff of smoke, quietly whispered, "Those that meet Yoichi die 7 days later." What? There's more. Yoichi isn't a living person. Offline meetings that Yoichi attends end in terror. What else was there? What is that? Something like an urban legend that started being whispered around Ikaibuchi. Yet no one's actually met Yoichi. No one knows if Yoichi is some old man or even what gender they are. However, everyone who attends a meeting that Yoichi goes to remains silent. The entire thread disappears. The participants stop going to Ikaibuchi or they die. Her low whisper felt like ice-cold water splashing down the back of my neck. On the other side, Karasu happily received her glimmering cup of beer and exclaimed, "Ah, delicious!" with a lackadaisical tone. "But those are just rumors, right?" I asked, and she laughed. "That's right. So basically, even if the house that grants wishes is amiss, there's the hope of Yoichi, so everyone's gathering for fun. So you don't have to fret about it any," she said, but I still felt mixed emotions. Until now, until today, I was trembling with fear alone, unable to go home. And then I suggested today's off-light meeting in the hopes of getting the opinions of veterans of Ikayagabuchi, having the story blown off immediately as my misunderstanding wasn't sufficient to quell my fears. However, if Yoichi has gotten interested, might the house that grant wishes be real? Who knows? I'm just as interested in seeing how Yoichi-kun's appearance changes a horror story that doesn't interest me into something more eerie. Doesn't interest. If it still bothers you, Ikagabuchi has a page for investigating haunted areas. You can request an investigation, although I still think you'll just end up being laughed at. She laughed as she quickly finished her beer. Indeed, the Ikagabuchi site did routinely check out haunted areas around the country regardless of fame. After investigation, haunted areas were graded on a scale of A to D, with A being called the most dangerous of spots. This rating was very unique in that famed areas such as Masakado, Kubiduka, and Iwainari were given a D rank by Ikagabuchi. In other words, they were rated as the lowest level of danger. Supposedly, it was because it had become an area that was evenly split, as human as ghosts treated each other with respect. On the other hand, places given an A rank were often unknown to the common populace. Places such as crime scenes that involved murders brought forth by thick emotions such as infatuation and jealousy, isolated locales of death by seniors who maintained fanatic delusions, and so on. They say those places serve as lightning rods for souls that resented the current world, souls that had lost personalities and simply became clumps of malicious intent, far beyond saving. As I thought such things, Karasu had begun peering intently at my face. "Hey, Nagi-kun. Yes? You have the mark of a meeting. Yes? And this is a girl. Seriously?" My expression loosened at her words. "Can you tell me a little more?" She began playing with the skull-shaped accessory near her breast as she continued. "How should I put it? It's a very dense meeting, like two souls previously split or reuniting, but," she said, seemingly looking through me at a different world, "it's hard to say if meeting this girl will actually result in happiness for you." "What's that?" "And furthermore, wait, isn't she dead?" "Hey, isn't that like being possessed? You gotta be kidding me," I thought, but I also remembered that she would tell me such ominous things every time we meet. Previously, she told me I had bicycle luck, and then I get hit by a mama-cycle on the way back, and then she told me I had gold fortune and was happy, but then I stepped on a gold-colored thumbtack at home. In other words, she was very good at presenting unfortunate things in a way that you can't tell it's unfortunate, which is an important skill for a fortune teller, I suppose. You know, Karasu, if you're a fortune teller, shouldn't you also tell people how to avoid misfortune? I asked. But it's up to the person whether to think of something as unfortunate. She stuck out her tongue in a cute way and then shouted to the employee passing by, "Another beer, please." As I sat there watching over her in a vexed manner, the door chime sounded repeatedly, and suspicious-looking people filed in one after another. Seeing how they were coming over after noticing Karasu, I deduced that they were people attending the offline meeting. Yo, Karasu, as beautiful as always. Long time no see to you too, Maru. I'm so excited. We have such karmic dispositions. As such conversations continued, my seat in the back of the family restaurant slowly became surrounded by activity. Every now and then I would see a familiar face, but most I had never seen before. I'd actively been participating in offline meetings in Tokyo, and that I continued seeing new faces en masse each time we made me realize how deep the world of the occult was. Just after 11, the group that had gathered at the back of the family restaurant with the odd interest had passed 30. Or rather, I'd picked the family restaurant figuring there'd be 10, so this was pretty big transgression. Looks from the waitresses passing awkward smiles at me hurt. Are there more coming? I quietly asked Karasu, who was engaged in friendly chat with other attendees, as she was a bit blushed as she responded, "It's way too late now." There are a bunch of people who show up without saying anything, so there'll probably be a few more. That's problematic. This might scare away Yoichi too, she commented lightly, but this might be really troublesome. So, which one's Yoichi? As expected, not even an hour had passed before the conversation blew past the house that grants wishes. The countless occult veterans crammed into the family restaurant each looked around them, frantically looking for the accursed Yoichi. "Alright, I propose introducing ourselves," said the middle-aged man going by the handle professor with his blushed face. Seeing empty beer mugs scattered around his table revealed how drunk this person was. And then, in response, others chanted, "Yeah, let's do it," and one by one the people stood up and gave a greeting. As at least half the participants were getting quite drunk, people began feeling less like occult maniacs and more of a complete drinking party. First, I'm Professor. My preferred area of occult are stories from people of post-trauma ethnicity. What? What's post-trauma ethnicity? Second, I'm Rabbit. I love folklore about Ryomen Sakuna-sama. I don't know what that is at all. Post-trauma ethnicity makes more sense. Third, I'm Harley. I get excited by stuff related to ooh parts. At the moment, I'm researching Voynich manuscripts. What are they going first, second, third for? And why are Rabbit and Harley both jumping on the wagon? The occult maniacs were very playful, and so they began introducing themselves one by one, with incredibly loud volume. I alone seemed to be taking the brunt of the customers' glares from the rest of the restaurant. Seventh, I'm Karasu. Yeah! When she energetically stood up, a round of applause rose, and in response she began socializing every which way, so I gave up. Come to think of it, it could be said that every offline meeting for Ikaikabuchi turns out this way, so it's like a trade of this site. Here, Nagi-kun, it's your turn next. Urged by Karasu, I begrudgingly stood up. 8. I'm Nagi. I'm a university student. What type of cult do you like? I like anything wonderful, but right now things related to ghosts. When I lightly responded to a question that had been flung at me, people began shouting, "You're too tightly wound. You need to drink more." And someone ordered beer for me. Man, I'm still 18. I'm underage. I can't drink. Don't worry. I'll drink it. Just act like you're drinking and they'll be appeased. Laughed Karasu as she smacked my butt with her palm. Well, in any case, the 30 or so people introduced themselves like this. And the conclusion, there was no one here who went by the handle Yoichi. Huh, so they didn't show up. I showed up to see Yoichi. Is anyone faking their handle? Said people one by one, but given that most had never seen other and that offline meetings weren't particularly rare, it was hard to figure if anyone was lying. Well, since we all gathered, can we discuss what the house that grants wishes is? I began, but Sue spoke over me. I think, an old veteran of Ikaikabuchi who managed a liquor store and liked collecting things like the arms of Tengu and the shell of Kappa, if I remember correctly. Yoichi might be a different handle of Krishna. I was sighing, but reacted to that name. That would make sense, someone responded. If we summarize the rumors involving Yoichi, if you deal with Yoichi, it'll have a terrifying end. Yoichi isn't a living person. Those that meet Yoichi die 7 days later, something like that. But we've never heard any specifics of anyone dying, and maybe certain threads were disappearing because Krishna was secretly joining the horror area investigations. That's what I think, anyways. I see, nodded even Karasu. Krishna hasn't been showing up lately either, so that'd make sense. Wait, please, I chimed in. Krishna isn't the administrator of Ikaikabuchi. Krishna, everyone's met him? Met him, or rather, he's always showed up to meetings before. But he's not here today? You want to see him? Of course. The reason I became interested in the site Ikagabuchi in the first place was being the person named Krishna was so fascinating. Of course, part of it was that I was interested in the occult from the start, but there was a different sort of attraction with the Ikagabuchi. That was apparent, for instance, by looking at the odd words at the top of the page. Things that bother people also bother ghosts. From the start, Ikagabuchi was a site intended to soothe matters between people and ghosts. Most people can't see ghosts. That's why, regardless of our lack of ill intent, that we probably bother ghosts more than they do as us was a perspective that was both fresh and unique, and as I read articles about renowned horror areas on Ikagabuchi, my conviction deepened. Each article was filled with care towards ghosts, taking care to show respect towards both the living and the dead. I always wondered, why are people always so afraid of ghosts? Perhaps some ghosts play tricks on people while others say, "Come on, stop it," and are stepping in and intervening, yet no one ever thinks of that possibility. Maybe that some sort of order is maintained by ghosts, and is why the vast majority of people live without ever being bothered by the supernatural. That paragraph struck a chord with me in particular. Those words moved me when I'd just arrived in Tokyo and hadn't met anyone I could call a friend. I realized more than ever that people were connected to other people through candor. It gave me courage that I could make it do in Tokyo, where it said that people's relationships with other people are often weak and diluted, where people trying to avoid needless interaction with other people as much as possible. That was actually why I began participating in the site. I became attracted to the person named Krishna by their daily updates of the wonderful. His deep yet wide-ranging knowledge of the occult, his in-depth, cool writing style. A truth that could be felt from each and every word. These were all things I lacked, and were packed with things that my soul needed right then. I'd gotten to the point where I felt like Krishna had become my brother and father in Tokyo. And if I could, I wanted Krishna to investigate the house that grants wishes himself. How old is Krishna? What kind of person is he? Nage-kun, you're stuttering. Calm down. Here, have a drink. Undeterred by the interruptions by Sue and the others, I rephrased my question. Please, tell me, how could I meet him? However, the response to my question was an awkward silence by the 30. I think he won't show up at an offline meeting again. Why? Some things happened. Some things? Well, eventually you'll find out. Leave it be for now. I only received vague responses like that. What broke the silence at the family restaurant was Zippo, who I think worked as a programmer. I oppose that opinion. That opinion? Asked Karasu, and Zippo pushed his thick glasses up and slowly answered. That Yoichi and Krishna are the same person. That thought. What do you mean? Actually, I know of someone who's met Yoichi at an offline meeting. Really? The gathering immediately rose in unison. What sort of person? How old? Guy? Girl? Which offline? They all asked, and Zippo quietly answered. The offline meeting was for an investigation of an abandoned hospital in the Tama prefecture about half a year ago. And what was Yoichi like? Well, I don't know. You don't know? Karasu asked, and Zippo swallowed once before answering. Because he's hospitalized. Hospitalized? Psychiatric ward. And with that, the excited gathering returned to silence. It was as if something heavy had descended upon the seats. Hospitalized in a psychiatric ward? Is that Yoichi's fault? Asked Sue, and Zippo slowly shook his head. I don't know, but even after regaining consciousness, all he mumbled is Yoichi. That's why I came to this meeting, because if Yoichi came, I wanted to ask what happened at that offline meeting. Everyone fell silent when Zippo stopped speaking, and then the family restaurant was filled once again with stories of Yoichi. Come to think of it, was the type of statement preceding conversations as one after another tales of Yoichi leaked out from people. If I were to summarize such topics, it seemed Yoichi infrequently appeared on the Ikagabuchi forum. Its appearance was not common, but whenever it showed up, it would post in almost every thread, providing opinions on everything, regardless of how maniacal the topic. Given the time of appearance, Yoichi could be imagined as an occult maniac that was sitting in front of a computer almost 24 hours a day. It had knowledge of the supernatural to rival Krishna, but their posts showed no signs of sharing the ghost love that defined Krishna. If anything, they could be described as more eerie, as if a dead person had eerily joined the internet. Maybe the rumors that Yoichi isn't a living person, they might be true after all, mumbled Jersey, who said he was a writer for a magazine. Remember that thread that popped up some time ago? I'm a ghost, but do you have any questions? Ah, the one where the IP traces and PC and hosts all came up empty, so people wondered whether it was real? I'm of the opinion that ethereal forms have good synergy with computers and digital equipment, because, brainwaves are weak electrical signals too. You do hear a lot of tales of ghosts writing online. Then that Yoichi, mumbled Sue in a summarizing way. We can't see it, but is it already here? Those words sent a chill down my spine. It's spelled spine. I looked around the brightly lit store. It wasn't just me. It seemed like everyone felt something cold. After that, the gathering seemed to decide to avoid talking about ghosts. Gradually, seats became arranged by topic as people broke off into their areas of interest. As the host of the offline meeting, I wanted to bring back the original topic, but I was certain no one remembered anything about my house. Furthermore, Sue was telling fascinating, eerie stories, and that was too interesting to pass up. A box brought from an antique store that could not be opened, ghost stories involving paper money found behind a painting on a hotel wall, a laughing girl who spoke often to a doll. Each provided entertainment that could leave you sleepless when alone at night. Everyone forgot about time as they enjoyed the endless flow of occult discussions. And at around 1 a.m., the offline meeting dispersed. Wait a second. I chased Karasu as she flagged a taxi while glancing at the Ikagabuchi members scattering in small groups. What about my house, the house that grants wishes? And then the useless fortune teller waved her hand with a completely flushed face. No problem. It's that, schema. And what else? I was gonna tell you something else, but, I forgot. What do you mean, forgot? Don't worry, you have the mark of a meeting. See ya. She smacked my back and then happily jumped into the stopped taxi. I stood there dumbfounded as I saw the taxi run off. I wondered if it was alright to go home to that house. The house that grants wishes.